I'm going to tell you why this came up as a topic, because it's kind of in the background of every evening, Ian. It's kind of in the background of every one of these that we do, but I thought, let's go head on. Let's just discuss it head on. And it's because of a series of events that happened, or a series of conversations that I had in the week leading up to this, or over the last couple of weeks, that's led me to realise that being present is it's a thing for life, obviously, but it's also a thing for artists. So I'm going to see if we can tie it into what we're all trying to do as creatives as well. So Steve says, I should not be here. I'm here until I get told off. Okay, cool. Family gathering. Understood. Okay, very good. Taking a break from the small talk. And Paul, hello. And George and Anna Spanner, hi. All right then. So the reason that this came up for me as a topic to do on the live chats is, so as you know, I went to Japan recently and had an amazing trip. And, you know, the place is really magical, and there's, you know, I won't go on about it now, but I really highly recommend like a trip there if you get the opportunity to do that. One of the things that we did was we trekked this hike trail, this sort of pilgrimage trail called the Kemono-Kodo, and we did that for two days. And prior to that, we'd actually been walking a lot around like temples and shrines and stuff like that. So we clocked up quite a lot of miles before we even got to doing this massive hike. And the hike was over 2 days. We hiked 2 days of it. I mean, it's a huge network of trails. We did 2 days of it, and in total we walked about 20 something miles. So we essentially walked a marathon over the course of 2 days. But it wasn't like flat roads. It was like, you know, up rocky paths, down slippery rocks, you know, through forests and stuff like that. So it was pretty challenging. And the first day I was okay, but the second day I just got really stressed and upset that I felt so tired, and I felt so weak, and I wanted to stop. But because of the context of the, you know, because we were treating it like a pilgrimage, because we were treating it as a sort of opportunity for, you know, seeing yourself or whatever, like you in that sort of situation you don't get away with just going, I've had enough, I'm getting a taxi. So I got a little bit of coaching around it, and I just sort of, you know, pulled myself together and carried on. But what I realized is that there was a part of me that was one of the reasons that the upset came up was because I thought I was stronger than I actually was. I thought I should be, you know, with the people that were sort of charging ahead, who were sort of half a mile ahead of me or a quarter of a mile ahead of me or whatever. I was like, why am I so weak? Why am I having to use both these walking sticks to be able to, you know, get up this path or navigate this path? I was disappointed in my body that I couldn't physically do what I wanted to be able to do on this thing. Anywho, so we got home from that. So we had about 4 more days left of the whole thing, and then, you know, got home, and first couple of days I was, you know, quite tired, and obviously jet lagged, you know, 10-hour flight or something. But then on the third day I started to feel like down, like kind of a depressed state, not depressed, but a depressed state. It was sort of, you know, I felt just really heavy, and I felt like I had no motivation or whatever. And I, you know, some of you may know I'm writing this book, and, you know, I thought that I would be able to start working on the book. And, you know, because I got a load of notes from my editor, and I wanted to sort of make headway with that. Well, frankly, I just wanted to get the fucking thing finished. But I just felt like I had no motivation. And I had, you know, you also may know I have a coach that I speak to a couple of times a month, and I had a conversation with him about it, and just explaining that I was feeling like almost a sense of left behind with my career, like that I had taken this huge, well, what seemed to me like a huge break, this trip to Japan, like, and now, you know, I had this feeling like everything had stopped and nothing was moving because I had stopped, you know, working on my career, and, you know, just all this madness basically like going on in my head. And then after that, and I came out of that call not feeling that great either, actually. And then the following day I was still feeling like, kind of like, God, I really want to be able to start working on this book, but I just have no motivation to do it. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like a bit sort of lost or whatever. So, and then I had another conversation with somebody who runs this kind of personal development organization, who organized the Japan trip actually, and she goes that I explained to her how I was feeling and what was going on, and she said, it sounds like you feel like you should be somewhere that you're not. That seems to be like what's causing the sort of distress or whatever. So I was like, supposed to be somewhere that I'm not. And when she said that, you know when someone just says something, says words to you that sort of just create some calm, because it's very different from advice. You know, sometimes people give you advice of things you should do or things that you shouldn't be doing, but sometimes some people are able to just say words that are just, it's almost like all they're just doing is getting where you're at, and it sort of brings a better sense of calm. And so she did that, this woman, by saying that, just like made me just go, that's okay. I can cope with that, like thinking I'm supposed to be somewhere I'm not. Now I get what's going on in my mind, and maybe that means that where I am is okay. Even feeling like I'm supposed to be somewhere that I'm not, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? That's okay. Hey, Pauline, Carl, Tommy, and Gwyneth. Hi. And so, you know, that after that, I just gave up. Because I thought, well, if it's okay that I am where I am, then I can just give up. And I did. And I didn't mean like give up as in, you know, like sell all my worldly possessions on the street and go running off like Forrest Gump or something. But I just like decided that it was okay to stop, because I get in my mind, and we've all got our own little story that we create around work and our lives and stuff like that, but in my mind I'm like, if I stop, then it all stops, and so I can't stop. And then I thought, okay, I'll just stop. So I basically just ate nice food and watched Insecure, great show. Finally got around to watching that. And I did that for about 3 or 4 days. And part of me was just like, God, I hope this isn't what I become. Do you know what I mean? Because you never know where your emotions or your state of mind is going to take you. And you just hope that if you do drop everything, that you'll want to pick it up at some point. Because you know that you can, but you want to pick up your life again and carry on from where you were. Or continue striving for the goals that you were looking for, or whatever. Anyway, thankfully at some point I did, and I did last week's creativity live chat, and I think we had a really good conversation last week, and then I was talking to a friend Tom, who you guys all know, who does the coaching, the business coaching. I think some of you have had coaching sessions with him. We sort of caught up after last week's live chat, and he was like, I was telling him about what I'd been through, and I was coming through the other side and sort of, you know, starting to piece myself back together again, basically, after feeling this real sort of like emotional kind of dip. And and I was telling him about the book, and I was like, the book just feels overwhelming. It feels like, you know, I got these 5 pages of notes from my editor, and it just feels like impossible. And I just feel overwhelmed. It's not like I am overwhelmed, but I just feel it. It's what I'm feeling like. So he said, okay, all right, I'm going to put my coaching hat on right now. Obviously, we're having a conversation as friends, but he goes, I'll put my coaching hat on. And he was like, if you do finish this book, and I'm assuming you want to finish it. I'm like, oh. He goes, if you do want to finish this book, what could you possibly get out of finishing it? And I was like, oh. And, you know, again, I'm so thankful, because like I had a couple of people contribute to me during this period that said things that was just like Tetris, everything falling into place. Because as soon as he said that, I was just like, I just saw the whole picture. And to me, the whole picture was, I could suddenly see how my mind is geared towards continually chasing, trying to get to the next thing, and not necessarily experiencing and living in the moment. So his question, what good could come of you like continuing to work on this book? I realized that I had the opportunity to write. I love writing, and here was a chance to do loads more writing. These notes were giving me the opportunity to do a ton more writing. And I'm not saying that in like a Pollyanna kind of way. Oh, well, look on the bright side. I genuinely, because the reason that I was feeling overwhelmed is because I was looking at the mountaintop and thinking, how the hell am I going to get up there? Rather than just, how do I get to the next base camp? Or what stuff do I need to get to the next base camp? That was actually the question that I should have been asking myself about what was next with the writing. And the relief that I felt after that conversation was like immeasurable, because I was no longer trying to pack a rucksack to get to the top of the mountain. All I was looking at was what was the next thing that I needed to do to make the next step. And so that is why the being present thing became something that I was like, okay, this would be a conversation for the live chats, because I saw what the cost is of not being present, because I had seen what my mind was doing to itself or doing to me or whatever as a result of not being present. That made me realize, okay, this is a conversation worth having, because I think that it seems like most of the time we don't spend a lot of time in the present. Let me just say hello to a couple of people. Gabe, is that Gabari, Jason and Daniel joined, and Steve's got to go. Okay, he's going to DM me. Great. So yeah, we don't spend a lot of time in the present, and I think sometimes we spend so little time there that we don't even realize that we're there, or that there is a present to be in that could be better than trying to think about the future, worrying about the future, regretting the past or something. So that's why. So and I think that for me there was a big cost that I could suddenly see, is because I've sort of created this race in my mind that I've got to get to a certain place. I've got to get to a certain place. I'm almost like the rabbit in, I think I said this last week as well, like the rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. It's like, I'm late for a very important date, and the guy doesn't even know where he's going or why he's got to go. Be at that place or whatever, and he's the one with the watch, and he's the one that's setting the criteria, but it's all made up. He made up the whole thing, and I think that was what I saw when I realized that you can just take one step at a time, and it doesn't have to be about that always be about that end goal. Because for some reason, I don't understand my own psychology enough to say why, but for some reason I've got this thing about getting to the finish line. But as I said last week, once I do get to the finish line, I'm already thinking I've already set another finish line. It's like a triathlete who is constantly adding another event onto the end. That's how I kind of relate it to life in a way. Not always, but often. And just in that one question, it's that sort of came into stark contrast. And it's not that it was an accumulation of contribution, like over the course of the week of me being in this state and just I don't want to do anything, and then speaking to people. So thank God for all those people, like who just like said the right thing at the right time, or maybe I was listening from a place where I could really hear it. They've probably been saying it to me for years and years or whatever, or other people have. But anywho's, so that's the long and the short of why we're here today, and I share that not to give you a long rambling story about it, but just to give you a real world example of what happens when one loses contact with the present moment. I think there is a big cost, and the cost to me was that I have this peak and trough experience. That I negate the present often. I can get lost, get untethered from the present, and create this made up experience of like being in a race, being in this constant race, to the point where it was even depressing me to go on Instagram. You know what I mean? Because like I was looking, I was seeing everybody just having a fantastic time, and I said to Sheila, the woman that runs this sort of personal development organization, I was like, Sheila, like it's got to the point where I can't even go on Instagram. And she's like, because it seems like everyone's just having like this most excellent life, and I was like, and she said, isn't that what Instagram's for? I was like, oh yeah. But that's the effect that it can have, is if you've like lost contact with the present, then seeing everyone winning, or seeing people have things that you think you want and you haven't got yet and you've got to work hard for, they can drive you to distraction and exacerbate the experience. So Amber, hey, what's up, girl? Paul says, good sharing. I can relate. I'm sure many of us can. Oh, I hope so, because that's the reason that I sort of explained the whole sort of dynamic of the whole thing. Hey, Billy. And George says, I will consider nano. Nano. I'm not sure what that word is. As aiming for base camp. Explain yourself. That sounds interesting. So yeah, explain it. What next? Oh yeah. So like I said at the top, there's a lot of conversation around being present, and it's spoken about as though it's a beneficial thing. But often our mind is either going off into the future, or it's thinking or in the past, literally in the past. And how we end up having moments of being present is that it happens kind of by accident, or it's fleeting. So some of the ways that I thought of things that can give us that experience of being in the present that we haven't necessarily gone out of our way to create is when there's an accident. So if you're involved in an accident, sometimes people say it felt like time slowed down, or you just weren't thinking, you just went into like this kind of doing mode or whatever. When you have an accident, when you're in a dangerous situation. So if you suddenly think that I don't know, say someone was breaking into your house, you get very present when you hear a weird noise in the house, kind of thing, because you're not thinking about did you set your alarm clock or something like that. You are totally in what the fuck was that. When you're having sex, if it's good sex, I guess, because it is possible to sort of drift off into other thoughts if it's not great. If you're in a thrill ride situation or something like that, so a contrived experience of danger, like being on a roller coaster or something like that. When you're experiencing great entertainment, one of the things that one of the reasons I think comedy, is so popular is because when it's good, it creates this experience for the audience of being completely present. I think it's one of the most remarkable things about seeing a great performance of any kind is the gift that it gives. And I think that is one of the reasons why people love experiencing live entertainment, and why it will always be with us despite what might be happening online or whatever. I think people will always want to have that sort of real world, in the flesh world experience of entertainment. Anyways, and creating. So when you're creating something, you're often very present. When you're really in the flow of creating something, you don't think, your mind might drift off, but generally speaking, you're very present. Billy says songwriting is a very being in the now moment. Yeah, it's a very being in the now moment type of thing. Songwriting, screenwriting, painting, even photography. If your mind drifts while, because there was a photographer with us on this Japan trip, and there's so much technically that needs to be done, but then on top of that, you need to be observing the world around you to not miss the beautiful colours of the forest floor, or the way the clouds are moving across the sky, or something like that. In songwriting and screenwriting, you have to have your antennas out, waiting for these ideas to sort of come down. You can't be thinking about, did I set the TiVo box? I don't know. Does people still have TiVo boxes? George says, National Novel Writing Month. Oh yes, I know about this one. Oh no, I'm thinking of something else. There's a thing that people do where they commit to writing a certain number of words. But anyways, yes. Okay, so if that's your base camp, that works. And D Firth has joined. Hello. Okay. So those are the ways that we can, by accident, end up being present. But maybe we want to sort of cultivate that. We rarely do it intentionally. And so the obvious question is, why? Why do we want to do it intentionally? Why do we want to spend more time in the present moment? Because we have this sort of propensity to sort of negate it because it's already here. We've already got it. We feel much more satisfied by either disappearing off into the future or thinking about the past. But the reason that the here is a place to experience more often, the here and now, is because that's all there is. Two reasons I've come up with. One is that that's all there is. The past doesn't actually really exist. It only exists in the way that we record it, in the way that we either remember something, the history books, we write stuff down, we video something, but that's not real. It's not, you can't go to the past. It doesn't exist in any real sense. And same with the future. It only exists in what we predict and what we project and what we expect. So if you can't go there either yet, unless you lot have got a DeLorean up your sleeve. Like the present is all there is. And so giving yourself the gift of being in it, but also being okay with it, gives you, number two, the only other reason that I think that you would want to spend more time in the present is because that's the most peaceful place. Because obviously with the past, it's already happened. You can't do anything about changing it, and you can, dip into regret or anger of remembering. Do you know what I mean? All the negative stuff that you can associate with the past and with the future. You can create anxiety about how is it going to turn out? Where is this thing going? I'm scared of doing the thing that I don't want to do, or whatever it is. The present is the only thing, you know exactly what's so, and you can be okay with that. So those are the reasons that I would say are worthy reasons of why one would want to cultivate an experience of being in the present more often. When I had depression about, how long ago is it now? It would have been about sort of 6 or 7 years ago, and it was a brief spell of very intense very intense experience of it. And what I found was the only way of really getting from moment to moment was literally thinking like moment to moment. Like, am I hungry? Yes, I'm hungry. Okay, go make some food. Like anytime I tried to extend my consciousness to beyond the next thing I had to do, it would just be so overwhelming. I would just have to go back to bed or something. So that, I think, is also testament to like how powerful the present moment is even in the most existentially debilitating state, the present moment can still be a peaceful place, even when someone is experiencing sort of, quite a deep sort of despair or depression. So that's my argument for why people would want to spend more time there. And then you're thinking, okay, so what does it look like when you're not being present? I think one of the biggest ways that we kind of lose touch with the present moment is by living this present moment referencing off the past or anticipating a future based off of a past that's already happened. Because just because it's happened in the past, it doesn't mean it's going to happen again. But often we only frame the current moment that we're in based on what's already gone, and that might not just be in relation to a situation. It might be in terms of the people we encounter. Oh, you know what men are like, or and it means that you aren't really in this present moment. You're in a kind of projection of your experience, limited experience of the past, and you're imposing it on this moment. And so you are essentially taking yourself out of this moment. So, for example, when I was on that hiking trail, I was living out of some idea that I had that I'm strong or stronger than I thought I was, and that I should be further ahead. And so instead of just being in the situation of, okay, this is the speed I need to walk at, I was trying to walk faster than I could because of some past idea I had about my own physical capability. And if I had just been with, okay, slow down, this is all you can cope with. And so what if you're at the back of the group? And so what if you're the slowest in the group today? And been okay with what was so, I would have been fine, and I wouldn't have had that sort of like little breakdown, little meltdown, little cry. But I wasn't. I was referencing off some idea that I had of myself, some past that wasn't so in that moment. trying to negate the current moment. No, I am stronger than I am strong. I can do this. I don't need sticks. I'm going to take a taxi then. Or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So we do this all the time. And look, this isn't to say that these things are wrong. This isn't to say that you should be living in the present, and if you don't, you are a terrible human being. It's just this is also the present. That we do this is also the present. This is also the what so that we can just be okay with and then be peaceful with. Let's go back to some comments. Amber says, being at peace in the moment is the best gift you can give yourself. Agreed. Amber says, yes, sometimes it has to be minute to minute to be all right. I have been there as well. Currently there now for different reasons. And yeah, that's step by step by step is sometimes the only way. In fact, probably it's the best way to live just anyways. But once we've got momentum, I think sometimes we get a bit ahead of ourselves and think, okay, cool, I've got momentum, I'll run now. When actually, there's no need. There's no real need. It's not that it's bad, but there's no real need. Billy says, we need to differentiate our experience from others and their experience. I believe it's all in the perception. I mean, yeah, there's also a part of us probably that wants to reference our present of somebody else's present, even though we don't know what they're referencing their present of. And it is probably a part of the human condition to just, not experience your present. Just look over what's happening with them. Okay, and now I'm gonna negate mine because it doesn't look as good as theirs or something. So this referencing of the past thing, I think that's one of the biggest issues in terms of of being present, is that you just are limiting what's really possible, because also it limits what you perceive, it limits what you see. When you really see what's so, when you see, it's almost like it would almost be overwhelming, like overwhelmingly beautiful, overwhelmingly rich, overwhelmingly everything. If you were really to perceive the present as it really was, you would see that it is not just enough, it is more than enough. But we don't live like that. And that's not the way the mind is built. But that's cool. I have an acting coach who said that how you do one thing is how you do everything. He was talking about acting, but really it's a lesson for life. He was really saying that if whatever problem you have with your acting work, you will probably see it playing out in many areas of your life. So for example, with me, it probably would be, I want to rush to the end. I want to get to brilliant before I've passed through rubbish, giving up, starting again, learning, getting better. Do you know what I mean? I just want to zip to the end. I've heard that same thing said in yoga studios. A yoga teacher said, your problems on your yoga mat will be the same as your problems in life. So again, if you're sort of the sort of person who's willful, who forces yourself to do something, even if you're not ready or capable or something, you will see that played out in many areas of your life. That is an example of living out of referencing the past in your present, experiencing the present based off of what you've been through in the past, rather than just seeing it for what it is. Anyways, I think you get the idea. I could just go on and on about this because it's such a big thing, but yeah, I think you get the general gist. So other ways that it can show up with not being present, what does it look like? Well, imaginary conversations in your head, arguments in your head with people that that haven't even said any of the things that you're thinking, not fully being with somebody. You know, when you're sort of listening and you're sort of like, sorry, yeah. No, that's not being present, because there's a whole wonderful human being in front of you, or maybe they're not being wonderful in that moment, but their human beingness is wonderful, and you're just like, sorry, no, I am listening. You're not, you're just waiting for the thing that you're going to say, or you're watching somebody else or something. That's an example of not being present. Hey, Carly, what's up? Anxiety or fantasy about the future, regrets or reminiscence about the past. Your expectations often are based not on anything in the present. They're based just purely on a past that has gone, that is your only point of reference. Rushing sometimes, fear, prejudice, arrogance, anger over little things. That isn't about the present moment. Especially, say, for example, somebody... I got into a situation in my car the other day where I pulled up behind someone who was trying to reverse into a space. So I stopped, and the person behind me was sort of like, went round me, and I was like, I'm not a dickhead, you know. I'm waiting for the person. You didn't have to sort of do that. And then I sort of, I sped up so that I stopped like literally like inches from the back of their car, and then I was like, what are you doing? What are you actually doing? So I just, and then let them drive off and carried on with my business. That wasn't a in the present moment. I was that annoyed me because I have this thing when I'm driving. It's like, I'm not a dickhead. I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So if somebody does something that makes me feel like that, I'm referencing off a past where, I don't know, at some point someone's treated me like a dickhead, and now I've got this crusade where if anyone, you know, does that, I get angry and want to have a road rage moment with them. Obviously, I know you can't. So I go as close as possible without actually causing an accident. But even that is nonsense. So I can't remember the reason why, but getting angry over small things. So even, you catch yourself getting angry over small things, you know you're not in the present. And then when you can just breathe, calm down and laugh at it, then you're back in the present. It's as simple as that. And like I said before, it's not that it's a bad thing being not in the present. Sometimes it's nice to have a little fantasy about, I wonder what this thing that I'm doing, I wonder how it's going to turn out. Sometimes it's nice to reminisce about the past. I remember that time. Remember when things were good? And this, in this particular situation. It's just that sometimes we get lost there. That's when it can take its toll, when it can have a cost, is when we get lost in these things. Amber says, I had to do that with running again. The only reason it's work this time is living in the present. I started with the mart and barely got through it the first time, but I took it from moment to moment. Absolutely. And I've got the same thing with working out at the moment, is like I'm doing 40 minutes of kind of strength training, I guess. And the only way I can enjoy it is if I literally, and I'm doing like 55, a minute of different exercises, and I do 40 minutes of that. And the only way I can enjoy it is if I literally focus on that minute rather than thinking about the whole 40 minutes. Because as soon as I think about the whole 40 minutes, I'm like, this is going to take forever. Or I make the exercise so hard that all I can think of is not dying. And then I get through it, and then before I know it, it's like, I'm at 35 minutes and I've only got five more exercises to go. So I think that's absolutely right. Minute by minute, moment by moment, step by step, exercise by exercise, yoga pose by yoga pose, word by word. Evie's joined. Hi. And now Amber is running 3.5. Yes. See, that's how it happens. George says, that is how I approach exercise too. Yeah, it's got to be done, because otherwise it just becomes a nightmare. And then you think, well, why are you putting yourself through a nightmare? It's the same as with me writing this book. I've got to do the notes anyways if I want to finish this book. But what I was doing was making it a nightmare for myself by thinking about how on earth am I going to get to that mountaintop? How on earth am I going to finish it? Rather than now, what I'm doing is just looking at one chapter at a time, looking at all the notes I've been given, and treating it like a puzzle. I'm playing this little game every day with this book and getting it finished. Got a thumbs up from Anna Spanner. So the costs, very quickly. I think we've really covered this. Denying experience more often. It's all we want. Could already be. What does that mean? I'm just reading out my notes. I don't know what I mean by that. Denying experience is okay. It's all we want. I don't know what I meant when I wrote that, but I know there was something. You just come on. We've all been there. Just read a note back later and just gone, that literally means nothing. What I do want to say though is that sometimes we have we're looking at how things are and accepting how they are, saying that what's so is just is the present and being okay with that. But that doesn't mean that things don't need to change, or that you can't also be working towards changing them. So sometimes For example, because I think the political situation we have at the moment is probably a great example. On both sides, there's a lot of unrest, and one could say, it's all wrong, and it shouldn't be, it shouldn't. But by being present, you can just say, this is just how it is. This is what's so. But in union with that, you can still also work towards changing the things that you don't agree with. So you can say, okay, we get that, voter turnout was very low, and we accept that. That's just what's so. But we can also work towards increasing voter turnout or whatever. That's just taking a big example. But in your own life, there will be things like you can go, I overeat by about 200 calories a day, say, for example. Probably more like 300-400, but anyways, that's just what's so. That's just what's so. You don't have to sort of beat yourself up about that, but you can also be working towards, I'm gonna find a way to reduce that. So you're not saying it's weird, because you're not saying it's the making wrong that sort of can make things harder. So by being in the present moment, by being okay with what's so, doesn't mean that you're saying it's okay forever. You're just saying I'm accepting that this is where we are. We are where we are. A friend of mine used to always say that, because his career hadn't quite transpired the way that he wanted it to, and he had quite a few knocks, and the way that he dealt with it was by learning to just really be in we are where we are, and not make it wrong where we are, but also give himself permission to work towards something else, to work towards changing it. Steppy 32 has joined, and Anna says, we all want what we want. It's okay to deny or not want an experience we have experienced. Yeah, absolutely. But that's what I'm basically saying is, if you've had a terrible experience in life, accepting the present moment isn't accepting that thing is okay. You're not saying, okay, I want that thing to continue. All you're saying is, it's happened. I am where I am. Now what? And from here you can change things. Like I say, when we get into the sort of beating ourselves up, giving ourselves a hard time over stuff, should wanting things to be a particular way wanting to change the present moment is a losing game. That's what I'm saying, because it is what it is. Now, if you want to in this present moment orientate yourself towards a different future, then yes, that's not being in the present. Planning in the present isn't a negating of the present moment. Planning is different from fantasizing about, I wish we've got a plan. We've got to be in this mode of like what's around the corner. Or you don't have to. You can just let life come at you. But like most people want to at least have a go at like creating their future, creating their life. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's when you get into this sort of mode of like vacating the present moment into the future so that you don't have to experience the present moment. That's when I think people can get into trouble. I know that's where I've noticed in myself, the more I'm fantasizing about the future, the more I'm like thinking, I hope this goes like this, and I'm not planning, I'm fantasizing, the more ungrounded I become. So I catch myself now. If I notice that that's what's happening in my mind, I just sort of bring myself back to the present. It's an ongoing thing. This has come up many, many times, and basically I'll say it again. Life is this, we think of life as this like what, and I do this too, like that once I've got this thing down, then I'm done. Once I've figured this all out, and I'll just keep doing that. But it's not. Life is a constant recreating, an act of recreation every day. Every day you have to will the things that you would like in your life. You have to will them into being. Those good, juicy, God-given things, like being present, forgiving, loving, being intentional. Those things you don't go put it in my back pocket. I've got that down now. I have being forgiving down. It's in the backpack. You have to recreate that every day. Same as the experience of being in the present moment. You have to recreate every day. it is a lifelong training thing that you and that's it. It's a lifelong training thing. And there's no way around that. It is what it is. Anna Spanner says, right. And I agree, planning. Sammy's joined, and Amber says, I'm reading these backwards. Amber says, yes, this is where we are, and it's okay. It makes working towards something easier and less stressful. Thank God, yes. I mean, that's the idea. That's why I say this, is because because that's what I noticed is present, or that's what occurs when you're not present, is it just creates stress. You can't be completely grounded in the present moment and be stressful. I really do believe that, like, honestly, in the present moment. I just don't think you can be stressed. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone will prove me wrong, but I don't think so. And DJ Fitz has joined, and Billy says, yes, it's a problem if you plan and anticipate struggle. I think the planning part's fine, but the anticipating the struggle, that means that you've left the present moment, because planning is just, you can anticipate problems, but if you're anticipating struggle, I think that is a case of referencing off the past. Well, I did this thing before and it was a struggle then, so if I do it in the future, it'll probably be a struggle then too. That's not being in the present mode of thinking. Nothing wrong with it, but I think if you are going, well, there is a possibility that could happen. If it does, this is the actions I will take. I personally think that's a different mode of thinking. So if you're not in the present, then like I say, it can create stress. It means that you're living all referencing off your known rather than what's possible. And it's like your known is like a tiny corner of everything that's possible. So it's like, it's not a right or a wrong again, but if you want to have access to the possibility of all things ever, you might have to sort of let go of this. We might have to let go of this past that we thought was true. Like for me, like this whole rat race thing that I've created in my head, or rabbit race, it's a belief system that I've had going on for a really long time, and it's not true. And I'm just waking up to the fact that there might be another way, there might be more possible if I let that go. I've been with it for so long, it's going to be hard. Because you know, like you believe in something, you've believed in something for so long that you don't even see it as a belief anymore. You see it as, no, that's really how things are. I will get left behind if I don't constantly keep at it on the work front. Everyone else is doing better than me. Everyone else's career is progressing and mine is stalled. You know, that mindset will take over you and become your truth. And it takes quite a lot to intervene with those sorts of mindsets. So you guys will all have your own thing going on, and hopefully this conversation will also create just a little bit of space, because even if you can get a sheet of paper between you and that belief, it will give you a bit more freedom and give you more access to the present moment. Because I think one of the other costs as well is you miss out on the peace and joy and that possibility of being in the present moment as well. There's a different way of being. There's a different thing you can access when you're in the moment, as opposed to somewhere else, basically. And I do wonder if that is what some people get from going to church, of just this opportunity to be completely here. Completely here. So as creatives, you know, being present, one of the things that being completely here gives us is the opportunity to make creating pure again. So it takes it out of this idea of this rat race or whatever story you've got going on attached to your creativity, like I'll be valued if I create, or I will win if I create, or someone so will love me if I create, or you know what I mean, like whatever it is. It takes it out of that and makes it a pure sort of joyful thing. It gives us the opportunity to experience the joy of what it is we do, because presumably that's why we got into it, is because we love it. We want to, if we could still live and do it for free, we would do it. Being in the present as a creative as well, it gives us permission to just take this whole thing one step at a time. Anna says, from when you've decided to plan in that moment, isn't that a positive? No anticipation, no negative. Yes, Anna, I completely agree with you. Amber says, I am all about that positive mind track until that becomes fact. Yes. Billy says, love that. It's like rather being the observer of your thoughts versus being your thoughts. Absolutely. Nailed it, mate. Hi, Fio, F-E-O, just joining the conversation. Exactly that, Billy. I mean, it's like one of the ways of being present is getting that, having some separation between that chat that goes on in the mind and it's almost like recontextualizing the mental chatter that we have, and you're the space, becoming the space in which that occurs rather than being those words, being that noise, being that chatter. Because I think that's how we relate to our minds most of the time, and I think that's probably how we lose connection with the present moment often, is that we are believing everything that this sort of, you know, monkey mind is saying to us. But when you just get that, like I say, that sheet of paper between you and it, you give a bigger context, and you are the space in which it is occurring. You are already way more in the present moment. I mean, way more. I don't know if you can be degrees of present. Anyways, you are more in the present moment than were you to just be listening to those words. Sometimes I've started sort of introducing meditation more, and sometimes my mind just goes into overdrive because it just can't bear the not doing and just the quiet. So I just observe it doing its blah, 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 blah. You should be doing that. Why haven't you done it? Have you turned the computer off? And I just, like, rather than try and stop it, which you can't because it's entity. It's like trying to stop your heart beating. It is a necessary function of the human condition. Just observe it. Why is she doing that? Why is she doing that? I should turn off the TV. It'd be easier to meditate if I turn the TV off. No. I've got my eyes closed anyways. It doesn't matter. It sounds, you know what I mean? Like, it just goes on and on and on and on. It never stops. It probably doesn't even stop when you're asleep because it dreams. So it's almost like, just watch it, observe it. I went on to Psychology Today or whatever it's called, and they had a list of 5 things to help you be present. One of them was witnessing. Witnessing, not just, I don't think just your mind also. It could be witnessing what's so around you. I used to do this thing with an ex where if we go walking, we would like stop and close our eyes and just listen, and we would say what we could hear. And it sounds like nothing, but it is one of the most magical things that you can do, especially if you're in the countryside, but it works in a city as well. If you just close your eyes and you're just like, and suddenly, especially when you're in the countryside actually, because you've got the wind and you can hear for miles and stuff, and the first things you hear are quite crude, big sounds, but then as you start to quieten, you start to be able to hear tiny little sounds. And it's a way of sort of occupying your mind, but in such a way that it keeps you present. It's a really interesting, it sounds like a bit of a dorky thing to do, but I promise you, like, it's really, especially if you do it with somebody else. And it's not a game, it's not a competition, it's not who can hear the most. It's literally just a witnessing, observing, being with the what's so-ness, and you just realize that what you thought was a quiet afternoon or whatever is so pregnant with things going on that most of the time, because we're not present, we don't hear. Okay, so Billy says, I think that's true self-awareness. Yeah, I think so. Like, if you can get to that point of just like that observation, then yeah, that is true self-awareness. It's a goal, it's a destination, but the journey is as important. Because otherwise, what I will do with that is, right, okay, I'm going to become the most self-aware person ever. And in the thinking that, you immediately become the least. I just wish I could turn it off sometimes. It's epic. Yeah, Theo, I don't know what your real name is, so I'm going to call you Theo or F-E-O. But yeah, I mean, I think the key is not to want to turn it off. It's like having a radio that's constant, that cannot be switched off. And the more that you fiddle with the knobs, the louder it's going to get, and the more So Caroline, hey Caroline, okay. So yeah, so the more you fiddle with the knobs and try and shut it down, the more the more frustrated you're going to feel and the louder it's going to become. So have it just be, and observe it. Just go, oh, that's my mind doing its thing again. And that'll give you so much more freedom with it than trying to turn it off. It's like I say, it is so fundamental to who we are. It's like trying to stop a heartbeat. It's trying to stop breathing, you know. In fact, it's less conscious even than breathing, because breathing, you can hold your breath, you can't hold your heartbeat. And it's the same with the mind. You literally can't, you know, it's that whole thing of like, don't think of pink elephants. And that's the first thing you picture. It's like it is so automatic that the only relationship we can have with it is observation. That's the only relationship you can have with it that will give you some relief. Because if you try and stop it, control it, do something with it, Caroline girl, it's not going to work. So just let it be. And also, when it is given room to be, you'd be surprised to find how much it is willing to quieten. Most of the time, what's going on in us just wants to be expressed and felt. We have to find responsible ways to do that. Like if anger comes up, it just wants to be expressed and felt. But what we tend to do is direct it at somebody else, when actually we're referencing off something that happened in the past, and something that's happening currently is a trigger for something, some emotion that we felt in the past that's still stuck in us, that just wants itself to be felt. If we give it room in a responsible way, it will just move on. Something else I was reading earlier was saying about how our being is just a constant. Our mind and our being wants to be in constant movement, and it's only us that sometimes wants to hold on to something and keep something sticking around. If you just breathe through, observe, let go, it will move on, and you can be in a different space. Believe it. I know I don't often believe that. Like when I said that thing about how I just let everything go, I was like, is this it now? Is this just going to be me? I'm going to be living out of a bag with a trolley, pushing it around town. Part of me was unsure whether I would move through this space. But you move through it. If you let it go, you can move through it. And that's what being in the present is. Sometimes what being in the present looks like is feeling very ungrounded and in the present. But as soon as you're okay with that, weirdly, you're in the present. I remember having a conversation, and I'll just end with this, I had a conversation with the guy who was, and it was kind of like a little sort of mini coaching sort of capacity that I was sort of talking to him. And he was like, I had this experience of being really grounded and at peace, and I just really want to get back to that. I just really want to get back to being in the present. And I said to him, well, you know, sometimes being in the present means getting that your mind is a little bit in overdrive, and just giving that a little bit of room. But he was not having it. He was convinced that being present felt peaceful and serene, and it felt like that experience that he'd had before. And all he would have had to have done is gotten okay with the fact that this current experience of being present looked like a mind in overdrive, and he would have been at peace. But he was holding on to this past experience as something that he wanted for the future or for the present, and therefore he immediately negated the present and wasn't able to access being present. It was such an ironic, and there was no contribution that I could make at all to put that right for him. So I just had to let it go. But just to remind you guys, being present doesn't necessarily mean sitting on a mountaintop, you know, being all zen and whatever. It is just what it is. It is moment to moment, just experiencing moment to moment, whatever. So being okay with it, moving on, letting it go, breathing through it. One other thing I will say before I go is that I read another thing as well that was saying that breathing through the mouth creates anxiety because it increases heart rate and creates anxiety hormones. So when you're doing your breathing, because really breathing, I always say this as well, it comes back to the breath will bring you back into the present. Nice big deep breaths that expel toxins from you and let you just be. And then it brings you back, puts your feet back on the ground, and then you can carry on with whatever it is you were doing. Let me just read your comments, and then we'll just say bye so you can enjoy your Sundays. George says, it is taking the judgment out of it, isn't it? Absolutely, yeah, taking the judgment out of how you're experiencing yourself, how you're relating to what's going on. When you can experience something objectively, you're golden. Seven Kings has joined earlier, and Baz and Helen. Hey Helen, how you doing? And Caroline says, thank you, I'll give it a go. You're making an amazing point. Do you think it's about not denying those thoughts that you see as negative and just let them roll in and out of your mind? Caroline, that is exactly what it's about. Just letting them roll through. We all have thoughts that we're just like, what's that doing there? Or gosh, I shouldn't be thinking that. When really, if you just let it roll by, it's not the mind. The mind is not you. You are a space in which mind occurs. Hey Mandy, Billy says it was a pleasure to be in the present with you. Oh, thanks Billy. We'll see you later. And thumbs up, Caroline. From Caroline and Baz and Anna Spanner and Dr. Linden has joined and Carly's is fantastic, and that's all we got time for, folks. That's it. I think we're good, right? It's quite a tricky one to get into. So I hope that if you missed the beginning, I hope the story at the beginning gives some context to the place that we got to at the end. Because yeah, it's like trying to handle jelly or something, this topic, but I hope we got there in the end. I hope that was of use to you, as always. Thanks, Helen and Amber and George and Chloe. What up? Thank you, guys. I don't know what next week's topic is. I'm kind of out of ideas at the moment, so if there's anything you want me to talk about, then just drop me a DM or, hit me up through the week. Paul says, I normally have a lot to add, but I was just in agreement. Thank you. Great chat. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you next week. Have a great week. I hope that you get the opportunity to stay present and just enjoy the moment as they occur, moment to 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 moment, and you get to your mountaintops. Okay, bye.